welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jessica, and I am here today, as of the day that we record it. It is quite cold outside in New York and also just in the tri-state area in general. So I must have had the foresight to plan this interview about a book that will chill your bones on a day that it was freezing cold outside. So first of all, This House Will Feed is a really creepy historical horror novel. It's got so much in it that I can't begin to start talking about without the author, who's here. Yay. So, Maria Tureaud, will you please introduce yourself and tell us about this book, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Tureaud. I am originally from Ennis in County Clare on the west coast of Ireland, and I am the author of This House Will Feed, which is my love letter to my ancestors. This House Will Feed is set during the time period of 1845 to around 1850, 1849, 1850. And anyone that knows anything about Irish history at that time will know that it's the time period of Ungurtha Mór, which is also called the Great Hunger, or as you might know it in the United States, the Irish Potato Famine. It is the story of Maggie, a survivor who has lost absolutely everything, her entire family, her livelihood, and we meet her in a workhouse at the beginning where she is then offered a very strange opportunity whereby she can gain freedom from the workhouse, and also some land of her own if she will impersonate this aristocrat's dead daughter to hoodwink some solicitors into giving this aristocrat her dead daughter's widow's pension. But of course, anything that sounds too good to be true probably is. So we travel on to the Burn in County Clare, a very stark landscape, or limestone landscape, I should say, where we have a crumbling mansion, a house with secrets, a house with a curse attached to it. And the story is told in dual timeline where we get snippets of Maggie's memories, where we kind of learn how she got to where we started. And it gives the history of the Great Famine. And of course, everything then is intertwined with Irish folklore, and the house is hungry and it's going to feed on all of her memories. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. It is Gothic horror, slow burn plot as a Gothic should be. And the haunting parts of it kind of creep up on you like an actual haunting. So when it really hits, you're kind of stuck with nowhere to go. You just got to either, like if it's real life, you got to deal with the haunting, or if you're reading it, you just got to read to the end, because it's one of those, once it grips you in, it's game over, I think.
It read very much like, almost like one of those Mike Flanagan limited series that they had on Netflix. For those who are unfamiliar, he did The Haunting of Bly Manor. Yeah, and
Midnight Mass.
Midnight
Mass is an
Mass, which
excellent one.
was amazing.
Yep, fantastic.
Yeah, and it really did have that feel where you're getting the perspectives of what's happening through the eyes of the main characters, and then a little bit behind the scenes, which is a compliment to your writing, because those are some of my favorite properties. So first of all, so she's in a workhouse, but it's almost like a debtor's prison, right?
Yeah.
A workhouse is like a misnomer, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty sure there were also some in the United States, probably later than the 1850s.
Oh,
here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are not innocent when it comes to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So they were basically debtors' prisons. There was no external debt, but once you entered the workhouse, there was no leaving the workhouse, because you're basically working for your keep. So every day your expenses are added onto your bill, so to speak, and you're never able to pay that off. So like, for example, if your food and board for one day is 3 pennies, you're earning maybe a half penny a day, you're never getting out of there. The only way to have escaped the workhouse was either through death itself, or through somebody sponsoring you out of there. But for most people, if you had someone to sponsor you, you wouldn't have wound up in the workhouse to begin with. So yeah, it was an offer she couldn't refuse, even though it sounded way too good to be true. But she had to take it.
So where did the idea for this particular story start for you?
So I actually wrote the very first line in 2017, and I didn't know what I was going to write at that point. It just, a line kind of struck me, and I stared at it for a while, and I left it alone. Um, but as I was looking at it, I kind of said, and it's funny because a lot of people have said this is such a strange time period to set a gothic horror around, but it's not. It works perfectly. Um, so I thought to myself, well, maybe because I haven't seen very much literature on the Great Famine. So I said, why not create this supernatural horror story around this terrible tragedy? Because the folklore goes hand in hand with what was happening at the time. And some of the folklore mentioned, especially the fair Goethe, which is the hungry grass. That's something that would have been very obscure even in those times, but it was something that kind of came to prominence during that time period. It was one of those folkloric elements that people had almost forgotten about until the famine hit, and then it kind of spread like wildfire. So it kind of came back into prominence during that time. So why not use that time period to portray this story? But then it was interesting. I was about halfway through writing it, and I realized that the famine itself had taken a complete backseat to this supernatural story. So then I decided, in order to really do it justice and to really make the reader understand what's happening, I needed to add that dual timeline to really the hammer home the history of it, and so that we see Maggie in a different place also. My main character, when we meet her, she is very much broken. But we get to see her in happier times in the past, and we see the progression of how she got to where we started. So that's kind of what the thought process was. But yeah, I mean, this was a terrible, terrible tragedy that very few people talk about. Even us, we don't talk about it. It's one of those things that's kind of glanced over in school, because it's so horrific that even like we can't bring ourselves to even teach about it. Um, so I said, why not? Like, if people don't know the history, then maybe I should add that dual timeline and kind of give everyone the entire picture. So that's kind of how it all developed.
So Maggie is hired by Lady Catherine, who is this aristocrat whose daughter passed. And it's this mysterious case. She's gonna learn how to impersonate her. That is almost like a completely different setting altogether, with other mythology as well. How did that come into it? Like, how did that character and this almost like impossible bargain sort of make its way into this story set in this time period?
So as with, well, for myself, I like a lot of imagery and metaphor, and for me, one of the cultural, um, the historical cultural aspects of Ireland and being Irish was kind of, even though this hand is feeding you, like, it will still kill you. So it kind of, this deal with the devil was almost like the Irish, like our relationship with the British throughout history. Like, even during, I'm probably going to get into way too much Irish history here for people, but during the 1916 Easter Rising, that it was the catalyst for our War of Independence. Most of the country wasn't for it. They were like these idiots up in Dublin, or because it had come to a point where we had lost our pride and our identity as a people. And it became like, just go along to get along, and we're okay. Why would you be starting a war again? And all of this type of stuff. Like, we don't want our children hurt. We don't want bloodshed anymore. We're sick of it. We're jaded. So Lady Catherine and this impossible bargain wasn't just Maggie making this deal with an aristocrat, but it was like the Irish almost making a deal with their own devil, which was the British Empire at the time. So for me, that's what it was. Everything in the book has some sort of metaphor and symbology, and Teddy as well. Teddy represents the British Empire, and like there was a lot of discussion about what to do with poor Teddy. But he had to end, his story had to end the way that it did. Otherwise, it wasn't going to be true to my people. So, you know, that's kind of anything in there is all going to be metaphor.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those who are going to read the book and without
Mm,
really spoiling anything, before Maggie lost everything, her entire family, and you really like the first line of the book is like bone chilling. Again, to use that term, it's like, oh, wow, like, um, but you find out that Maggie before all of this had she had a relationship with this man he was I guess Anglo English and because this happened before that it didn't end very well for her but you also it's interesting because her memories are missing too,
hmm
right? And you get the pieces of her past in sort of a you know weird uh timeline in a way. um how did you sort of fit those together and decide how much you were going to reveal in present and then when it was time to reveal something in past?
so with the Gothic, because it's a slow burn, um, first, like any time we got to a part in the present timeline where there was some sort of a cliffhanger, we couldn't wait to keep going. That's when I would pull it back then into the past memories and to slow down the pace slightly. So anybody who's looking for a regular horror contemporary, type of style is not going to get that. This is a Gothic with that slow build up of a story. So anytime we had a bit of a cliffhanger in the modern the present day timeline, we then went back into the past. So we were just kind of I was just kind of like giving enough to set the stage in the regular timeline, and then we were getting all the details in the past. And again, Maggie's memories being kind of missing. When you go through something so traumatic, you tend to black things out, and especially one of the traits I would say of being Irish is pushing everything down and swallowing it and just getting on with things. You just have to push forward. Like you're not allowed to grieve. We had the funeral, now we get on with it. And everything has to be swallowed down. So yeah, that can, so it wasn't outside the realm of possibility that she had kind of blacked this stuff out so that she could get on with the business of trying to survive. Um, so yeah, so it was the things then that are revealed in the past timeline are then relevant to what's happening in the present timeline. And nothing is revealed in the past that we haven't already covered in the present. So I wanted to make sure there were no spoilers throughout. So yeah, it was a difficult jigsaw puzzle to fit together, but we figured it out in the end.
The background of Lady Catherine in particular, without giving away spoilers, were you fully aware of that when you started writing her character?
So, and this thing happens. Look, when you talk to authors, a lot of them say, "Oh, I'm a great plotter," or "Oh, I fly by the seat of my pants." For me, this book was completely fly by the seat of my pants, and I have this thing sometimes happens where I don't know what's about to happen, but my fingers are typing, and the character is taking over. And Lady Catherine was that character for me. So initially, no, she was just meant to be an Anglo aristocrat. But then things kind of developed where I almost wanted, because in Irish storytelling, there's never a bad, like no character is good or bad. Every character in an Irish story, in Irish storytelling has good and bad traits. So we could see Lady Catherine as kind of a bad character, but the reason she's doing what she's doing is really good. And the same thing,
Yeah,
Mag,
definitely.
you
A
know,
100%.
yeah, what she's doing is good, but she can be seen as an antagonist. But the same thing then for Maggie, she's doing what she's doing for selfish reasons. in the beginning at least, But then she begins to realize as time goes on, and that this was where things got interesting, where that facet started to develop with Lady Catherine and her backstory. Maggie and Lady Catherine are the same. And we see Maggie with this serious distrust of Lady Catherine. So that then was kind of a metaphor for Maggie almost not trusting herself. She couldn't trust her memory. She wasn't sure what was happening. She wasn't sure if what she was seeing was real or something she was hallucinating. So there was that facet as well of Maggie not being able to trust Lady Catherine, but making sure then that they were kind of the same character, so that we saw that contrast. So it's kind of the concept of any antagonist can be the protagonist of their own story if they're written well. So even though Lady Catherine was kind of the antagonist for Maggie, Maggie could have been the antagonist for Lady Catherine. So that's kind of where that developed. So yeah, so then I was like, well, I guess I better create this backstory for her that's a little bit more in depth, a little richer, and we'll see where we go from there. But yeah, Lady Catherine kind of took over there for at a point. She just completely overtook my writing process for a while, and she did something very unexpected near the end, and I had to go back and rewrite a few bits and pieces to make it make sense. But yeah, we got there. So yeah, I'm one of those people where the characters take over, unfortunately.
I
It
mean,
makes for some good stories.
it's not unfortunate for the reader.
No, not at all. It's unfortunate for me in
Yeah.
editing and having to go back doing 50 sweeps, but yeah. But yeah, it worked out very well.
Is this your first published book for adults?
It is my first published book for adults, not my first written adult book, but yes, my first published book for adults.
How was that shift in tone for you?
So I started off writing adult and specifically writing adult historical fiction. So for me, it was actually nice. It was almost getting back to my roots a little bit. And of course, everything I write has a darker element to it. So it was kind of a hop, skip, and a jump to be able to do the kind of the dark gothic horror. It was fantastic. But yeah, it really felt like I was coming home. Like I really was coming full circle and getting back to my roots again. It was lovely.
Well, it was a great read.
Thank you
It
so
really,
much.
really was. And I think people are really going to devour this one. Pun intended. Pun intended.
No pun
Um,
intended.
pun intended. But man, like, like when you, it's such a contrast. Like when you read that first line and then you go into the book and, it's like, oh, where is this going to come in? But it really is, not just a good read, but it's, an interesting lesson in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I moved to the States in 2007. And one of the things I guess you see in Ireland we get a lot of American tourists, but those American tourists tend to have some interest in going there. So
Yeah.
I don't know, when I moved here I was kind of expecting that kind of um reception almost, and that wasn't the case, and that's fine. But what was really interesting to me was learning how many people here have claim Irish heritage, but they don't know anything either about the country as it is today, or the culture, which is very
Mhm.
different to here, or the history. So I said, "Do you know what now? Do you know what would be lovely? What if I was able to write something that was not only entertaining, but gave those people a glimpse into the window of their past and maybe their own ancestors and what they kind of went through, on their journey over here, and just to give people a little bit of insight, because I do find that you're either very into history or you're not at all. And if you're not into, if you have a passing interest, you're not going to go looking for the nitty-gritty details, but maybe if it was presented in an entertaining way. So I just wanted to help people maybe connect to their roots a little bit.
Thank you so much. This House Will Feed is coming out in February.
It's a February release, but it'll release January 27th. So we have 7 days. Oh my
Oh my
gosh, from the
goodness.
recording. I know
Wow.
it's coming out next week. I'm so excited.
No, it's wow, sooner than I thought. So
Yeah,
check it
amazing.
out. Yes, absolutely check it
Yes.
out. And I hope to see more of you. Do you have another adult book in the works? And or
Yes,
YA
absolutely.
middle grade, whatever. What are you working on
Yep.
next?
No, we have another Irish history Gothic horror called Beneath It Sleeps, releasing February 2027. And
Mhm.
that's also coming from Kensington, 1700s, the Hellfire Club. Very much another very dark book, but I was able to lean a little bit more into the horror for this one. So I was very excited. A little more into the horror, a little more into the folklore. Much excited for that. So that is February of 2027.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
This was Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and my guest was,
Maria Tureaud,
and
author of
we,
This House Will Feed.
yes, 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 and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.